Hello and welcome to Full Tech Ahead. I am your host, Amanda Razani, and I'm excited to have Mery Zadeh here. She is the Senior Vice President of AI Governance and Risk Assessment or Risk Consulting, rather, at Lumenova AI. How are you?
Hi, Amanda. Nice to be here.
Happy to have
Happy.
you on the show. Can you share a little bit about your background and then what does Lumenova AI offer?
Sure. So I have a finance background. I started with risk and compliance. I worked for KPMG for 10 years, was a director and head of risk transformation in KPMG Norway. And then started in Lumenova as SVP of AI governance and risk consulting. So what we do is that we have a unified AI governance, risk and compliance platform. We help organizations govern, monitor, and scale AI systems safely. So basically, we're turning AI risk to possibilities. I love that. I love to say that. So risk to possibilities, Amanda.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to hear more about that. And our topic today is about all things AI. And I'd love to hear more about building AI governance teams. And from your experience, where are there issues with a lack of skills and how can those be addressed?
It's a very interesting topic because, I love talking about AI governance, and I think it's a very important topic to talk about in 2026 because we see that AI governance requires a unique blend of technical, regulatory, and business fluency. You need people that are able to speak these languages fluently. And the problem with that is that we're not creating career paths for these specialists. We're just looking for the unicorn that has all these three, qualifications and skill sets. So I see it as as I mentioned, a three language problem because the technical teams, they have to understand regulation, while compliance teams, they have to understand the model structure, data flows, and the business, their perspective is like, what is the risk tolerance, what is the operational impact, but they have to be able to communicate that to the technical teams and to the regulatory teams in order for the teams to be able to function together and work together.
Well, so where communication is absolutely key. So, what tips do you have to improve that communication between departments so everyone's on the same page?
So I think we should stop as organizations. We should stop as when we're building AI governance teams. We should stop looking for, as I mentioned, a unicorn that has all of it, because usually we come from different domains. I come from risk compliance and internal auditing. I'm a certified internal auditor, and even my path was starting there. But I had to, start understanding the technical team's language, right? We have to. So if you come from that domain, you have to educate yourself on the technical aspects of AI, right? You have to understand model structures, AI systems, why a model drift, what is the trained data, what is, why you have to evaluate and why are you evaluating your AI systems on, to be able to communicate with the technical teams. So first, don't look for the unicorn. Start on career paths, start on education. So for example, you can have different rotation system. Like if you come from internal auditing and you have to be auditing an AI system, you need to be maybe rotated in a technical team for a while to understand, to learn, you know and then if you're a compliance person and you see frameworks, you see regulations, and you just see a set of regulation that we have to comply with, in order to be able to translate that to the technical teams. Again, you have to understand, what does it really mean in AI, different AI systems. So we actually in Lumenova, we start building training programs because nothing existed from before. But rotation, education, and invest in career paths.
Absolutely. I think more companies now than ever are realizing that they need to provide their own training in order to get the employees with the skill set that they need?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's not easy because the AI is evolving every day. The frontier models are evolving every day. The evaluation criteria changes in the sense that sometimes we don't even know what regulation are we going to comply with. So if you're going for NIST, this is just a guideline, right? It's different than if you're looking to implement ISO 42001, or if you're looking at EU AI Act. And interesting problem going forward as well, how like global organizations are able to comply with the different regulation. But going back to the topic, definitely invest in education of your already existing resources and people.
What is your in having worked with so many business leaders, what is the best advice you can give them to have success in this area?
I think when we're talking about AI, implementing AI governance, I have a lot of talking points. But in terms of skill set, I would say looking at building different teams and making sure that these different teams, technical, business, and compliance, framework, legal people, build the teams cross-functional. Because if you just let's say that you're building AI internally, yeah, systems, it can be a chatbot, right? And you have to go through a life cycle. This is like the best practice. You have to go through a life cycle. You start with an intake process, a questionnaire to making sure which business starts, right? You have an intake process that business starts, and then you should have a risk assessment that legal and risk people's the second line people should be involved in. And then these two have to communicate together to make sure the output is correct. And then you get to the build phase where the developers come in and then like, okay, so what are we building and why are we building this? So from, phase one which is intake, to phase two, which is build, even like in the beginning of building an AI system, they have to be able to communicate. And as an organization, we have to build the life cycle of an AI system because we know the outcome will be best at the end because they have communicated and they have worked together, making sure that it's technically correct, complying with the right regulation, and have the audit ready documentation. And also, it's built for the intended use.
Absolutely. Well, the other part of this is that AI is constantly evolving, and so are the regulations in tune with that. And so, what do you envision the future of AI and regulations, say, a year from now?
So we have the EU AI Act that is going to be enforced in August 2026. And then we have in US, we have, Colorado Act, we have different state level acts. And then we have the guidelines like ISO 42001 or NIST risk management frameworks. I think we will have more regulation. I mean, in Europe is different. They already have a regulation and they have to comply with it. And starting from, as I mentioned, 2026. But in US, I think the way we've looked at it in the US is a bit different, right? So we started with less regulation in order to make sure that the innovators, it's an open road for the innovation, right? We didn't want the regulation to be a showstopper. But I think evolve, as the AI evolve, we need more regulation on different parts, probably, because we see that it's not the AI of 2023. It's not. We're not talking about, even we're not talking about traditional AI. We're not even talking about the Gen AI, where we were worried about the output, like right, because until now we were like, okay, we're giving it a prompt, we have a chatbot, we are worried if the output is correct or not. Is this output representable? Is it hallucinated, right? But in 2026, it would be more focused on agentic AI, where we would be worried about if it has the right permission, if it's within what we gave the agent to do. For example, if you have an agent that is supposed to book meetings for you and it does it perfectly by canceling your other meetings to optimize your calendar, right? So it's doing its job, but in order for you to make sure that it's actually doing the right thing, you need to have mm, right controls in place. You need to have continuous monitoring, and that's basically one of the key learnings we've seen in 2025. In general, you need to have continuous monitoring. So the annual audit that worked perfectly for traditional AI and maybe for Gen AI a little bit, it's not going to be doable going forward. You need definitely to be more on real time monitoring and continuous observability going forward. Another thing is that, as I mentioned, it will require frameworks that makes real-time authorization decisions, not just post, postdoc reviews. We need to, again, as I'm mentioning, real-time monitoring and having alerts, having dashboards that show you how your model is performing, if it's not hallucinating, if it's actually doing what it was intended to do in the right way with the right risk.
Yeah, that was so helpful. Thank you for sharing your insights. Well, if there was one key takeaway that you could wrap it all up with and share with our audience today, what would that be?
I think they have to start with, in general, what I always say is that they have to start with mapping of the AI systems, because I always say that you can't govern what you can't see. So a simple way to start is that you start with an AI inventory, making sure that you have an overview of all your AI systems in place. Also, I would say invest in education, invest in cross-functional teams in order to make sure that they are communicating. Because if we want to succeed in this era, we need to have humans, the right humans with the right education, with the right understanding of AI in order to help it to be more reliable and trustable. Also, I would say the organizations that will succeed with AI governance in the future, they are not the ones with the like perfect AI governance in place and perfect policies, perfect structure, the perfect tool, but they are actually the ones that are understanding what is required um, to for the teams again to be able to work together. Because we don't want AI governance. We don't want a perfect AI governance. We want something. We want governance that practitioners actually use. So we want the control, sets. We want the evaluations. We want the monitoring set up from legal teams and compliance and AI governance. COI teams that the developers actually use and they follow. So it was a long, closing, but what I would say is that make start with your AI systems and then make AI governance practical, so the developers would use it and see the value in it, basically.
Great. Thank you so much for all the tips and advice for our listeners.
You're welcome. I hope it's useful.
Yes. And thank
Pleasure to
you.
be here.
And thank you to our audience. Please share any questions or comments you have below in the comment section, and I will be looking and try to respond. And until the next podcast, have a wonderful day.